From his thoughts on capitalism that have been debunked by experts, to the moment he was schooled on Twitter for trying to out-Christian the Pope, here are some of the times Jordan Peterson has been proven wrong. Now, despite his intellectual persona, Peterson has been proven wrong by experts before. Just consider his worldview, which defends capitalist hierarchies and pretty much says that people shouldn't do anything to change them. Despite his controversial opinions, he's not the kind of guy to pull his punches. And Jordan is always ready to let the world know that. Of course, because of how opinionated he is, it's not long before something he says gets a crowd riled up, ready to cancel him. But that's not the only reason why he aggravates people so much. There have been tons of situations where the guy was outright proven wrong. And well, this only adds to his divisiveness, because his critics feel he's misleading his audience by sharing such outrageously incorrect takes. Sure, he might be seen as an inspiring figure by some, but the fact is, Peterson has been proven wrong from time to time. If you can bear to go through his book, you'll see a couple of recurring themes. For one, Peterson feels that the needless ambition for scientific reason has done much to crumble a traditionalist lifestyle. This erosion, according to Peterson, leaves society at a crossroads, a choice between a cynical retreat from the world or a totalitarian impulse to force meaning back into existence. But there's a big problem in Jordan's worldview. You see, when it comes to pondering the root of this crisis, unlike some left-leaning folks, Peterson steers clear of questioning whether capitalism has a role to play in it. It's quite a head-scratcher because capitalism has left its fingerprints all over traditional aspects of life. Take a look at the megachurches in Texas, where pastors swimming in millions peddle their wares, or journey to the Andes, where Canadian mining industries have left rural communities in shambles. Capitalism, like a chameleon, has shape-shifted the world we know. So, why does Peterson give capitalism a pass on this one? Here's a clue. Peterson often directs his criticism at somewhat obscure French philosophers. By pinpointing these thinkers as the culprits, branding them as ungrateful intellectual sophists, Peterson conveniently sidesteps a thorough examination of the tension between his advocacy for tradition and his role as a promoter of global capital. It's much simpler for him to point fingers at Derrida and Foucault, labeling them responsible for the rise of postmodern cynicism, than to explore whether an ideology built on the premise that everything has its price plays a role in the diminishing faith in timeless values. His critics are quick to call out his contradictory takes because of this, and have given him a ton of heat for not addressing the main cause behind the supposed issues that he has so prominently highlighted in his book. And well, that's a problem. Think about it. If one of Peterson's primary philosophies can be proven wrong so easily, who's to say the other things he's mentioned can't just as easily be taken a stab at? For some people, it completely discredits many of his other opinions and thoughts and turns him into a figure who's less of a philosophical thinker and more of a laughingstock who's been proven wrong time and time again. It's hard to take someone like that seriously, but despite this, he continues to amass a large audience. Much of this is because the things he says tend to discuss larger ideas that appeal to some individuals. But it's important to make sure that you're still holding him accountable when he's flat out wrong. Take, for instance, Peterson's stance on a grand narrative that shapes human history, genetics, and culture. Sounds intriguing, right? But when you try to pin down the specifics of this meta-narrative, things get a bit fuzzy. Rather than providing concrete details, Jordan directs our attention to ancient Egyptian art featuring entwined snakes. He suggests this might be a coded memory of the DNA helix. But a more grounded explanation would view these images as a depiction of snakes mating, not some mystical insight into DNA. It's a small detail, but it seems to support the enigmatic nature of his broader claims. Plus, Peterson argues that people's reported experiences with psychedelics could be instances of contact with the divine. This, however, raises more questions than answers. What does divine even mean in this context? A more logical explanation would attribute similar experiences to the shared neurological structures in people's brains. Just like how many people drink coffee, for its psychotropic effects experience similar outcomes because of our shared biology. If followers of Peterson adopt these notions about the DNA helix and psychedelics as a spiritual gateway, they might be heading into misleading territory. It's crucial to question fanciful claims like these, as they could introduce significant errors into the overall analyses. But of course, that requires you to carefully analyze his claims and point out stuff that he's got pretty blatantly wrong. And trust me, there's a lot more where that came from. For example, many people feel that he's all caught up in a naturalistic fallacy. Peterson often attributes goodness to things simply because they exist. Take lobsters, for example. He often describes their dominance hierarchies and encourages young men to find inspiration in the victorious lobster. But the animal kingdom is diverse, showcasing instances of mutual aid. Asking someone to emulate a lobster is like a woman justifying eating her husband because of the existence of praying mantises. I mean, it's kinda insane to even think about. The public's reaction to this take of his hasn't been great, especially when you consider how much more inconsistent it gets. On one hand, he implies that nature establishes a virtuous hierarchy, and on the other, he insists he's open to criticism of the existing order. When he seemingly makes a fallacious claim, such as hierarchies are okay because they're natural, he'll quickly add a caveat, essentially diluting his statement by saying, natural things are sometimes okay, but not always. It's a balancing act between embracing natural tendencies and acknowledging the need for critical evaluation. Oh, and let's not forget the stance that first resulted in his popularity. For those of y'all who might not know, one pivotal moment that catapulted Peterson into the limelight was his opposition to Bill C-16 in Canada, which expanded human rights protections to include gender identity. Despite the primary goal of shielding trans individuals from discrimination, Jordan adamantly viewed it as a totalitarian, compelled speech bill. The actual text of the law didn't mention pronouns, and legal experts clarified that the fear of forced pronoun use was a misunderstanding. Fast forward a few years, and C-16 has yet to lead to any charges related to pronoun usage. Still, Peterson remains resolute in his stance, even though he's basically been proven wrong, and a lot of his initial concerns can be chalked up to fear-mongering. His critics can't help but wonder, could there be a misunderstanding about the law's intent? Or is this just another situation of him being an alarmist? I mean, that wouldn't exactly be a surprise. His use of language rooted in Jungian archetypes and his dramatic presentation style might make some dismiss him outright. Plus, let's not forget the time he was schooled by Christians on Twitter. So, imagine challenging the Pope to a debate on Christianity, thinking you've got it all figured out. Well, that's what Jordan Peterson did. The Pope, in a tweet, advocated for social justice, urging people to combat issues like poverty and inequality, while defending social and labor rights and human dignity. Sounds pretty in line with Christian values, right? Apparently not for Peterson. He took issue with the term social justice, claiming it had nothing to do with Christianity. But wait, isn't the Pope essentially reiterating the principles Christians are supposed to follow? Peterson seemingly didn't care and focused only on a single part of the tweet, completely undermining the larger message it was trying to give away. And well, people were not having it. He received backlash for attempting to out-Christian the Pope. People argued that the Pope's message aligned perfectly with Christian beliefs and that Peterson's bias prevented him from acknowledging the positive aspects of what Pope Francis was saying. And honestly, can you really feel like you can trust the opinions of a man who's been proven wrong so many times before? I'm not denying that Peterson likely has made points that are sensible. After all, his large audience surely likes him for some reason, right? But it's important not to put individuals like him on a pedestal, thinking that they're always right. Jordan has a tendency to be wrong, and it's up to people to call him out on it when he is. So from the time he was schooled on Twitter for trying to out-Christian the Pope, to his thoughts on capitalism that have been debunked by experts, those were some of the times Jordan Peterson has been proven wrong.